Today we have South Dakota Secretary of Agriculture Lucas Lentsch with us, and Lucas, it's just a pleasure having you on our broadcast today.
Russ, thank you, and I really appreciate the invitation, and it's a great day in South Dakota that we can talk about agriculture and the future of our state.
Mm-hmm. That's really what we want to get into, and I know that you've been in the Secretary of Ag position for a while. What do you think in your background, if we're going to talk to our listeners, what is it in your background that probably influenced Governor Dugard to go ahead and select you for this role?
Without a doubt, I know that it's the military background that I had from 20 years ago that has really helped put my core values in place. We're all products of our environment, Russ, whether it's from our family environments, but also to those environments that we're exposed to in our young professional and adult lives. And for me, that was being an enlisted soldier, having had the opportunity to go through officer candidate school. The military really provided me a foundation of leadership skills that have translated very well into the workplace. But on top of that, it's also that willingness to take a risk and be an entrepreneur, and all of that has really created a unique background for myself that has really worked well in the position that I'm in today.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring that up, because as I talk to people around the state, of course we have the Directional Motivation website, and then we also do the recruitment effort, executive recruiting throughout the nation, and a little bit on the international side. But the comments about you, Lucas, I'll give you a little fluff here, so to speak, is that you see things from a lot of different perspectives. And when you bring your opening comments, meaning that you've been an entrepreneurial business owner, you've been in the military, all the different perspectives really have to make your job a lot easier in some respects, because you're seeing it from a lot of different perspectives. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that. And part of those perspectives come from living in rural South Dakota. And if you're from a rural community across our country, you understand that our communities are ran by the people that show up. You really don't have to look any further than a community event in the fall of the year and then again in the spring of the year, and you might see the very same people helping run it. And what I learned when we lived back in Marshall County, where I'm originally from, is that helping set up and establish a community nonprofit was really an opportunity for me to learn how industry can function together with government, local government, and then ultimately how we can interface with state government. And so having those early experiences, and in my case it was an organization called Glacial Lakes Area Development up in the northeast corner of South Dakota, and I just really appreciated the education that came from helping start in with something from the ground up. And one of the things that I learned early on is that you can have something with a lot of interest and popularity, and you have a lot of people that show up and want to be a part of it early on. But when it starts happening where it gets down to doing the chores of any job, those that continue to show up are the ones that at the end of the day are making the decisions. And whether you're dealing with a nonprofit or you're in business or you're in government service, if you continue to show up with a disciplined approach to each and every day and managing those expectations not only of yourself, but also of those that you work with and work for, and help lift up the best ideas to focus your efforts on. Many times what I've discovered is that we can get really bogged down because we're an inch deep and a mile wide on a lot of different subject areas. And it's important, whether you're making the cash register ring and paying bills or trying to implement policy, you rein it in and you really focus your efforts where the lowest hanging fruit is, but ultimately where you can concentrate your time, talent, and treasure of your organization.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You talk about the treasure, and one thing that you do is treasure South Dakota. Anybody that talks with you, it comes out loud and clear, the value that you put on South Dakota. And I thought, maybe we should take a little look, or maybe a direction to our interview here, and talk about what's available in South Dakota in terms of employment opportunities within the ag sector, and maybe even in a broad sector, the labor sector across South Dakota, and kind of bring our listeners up to speed with what's going on, because there's some pretty neat stuff going on.
You know, one of the great things about South Dakota is that we've recently been named the #1 most business-friendly state in the country. And part of that is we believe in having a very low tax burden environment. You know, there's no corporate income tax, no personal income tax. We have a very low tax base in our state. But that means opportunity. And so some of the things that are happening is that continuation of a diversified agriculture portfolio here in South Dakota, because that represents about 30% of our economy, or about $25.6 billion. That's a big industry, and when you have an ag-based state like South Dakota, the diversity of opportunities only continue to evolve with science and technology, and really the best practices being implemented today. So it's an exciting time to be in the role that I'm in on behalf of the Department of Agriculture and working with Governor Dugard and this administration, but it's really also exciting because we're at a high time in agriculture where innovation continues to take leaps and bounds forward, and that science and technology is bringing home great opportunities to our state. And so a lot of our role has been to go out and look for that best company or that new industry that could evolve here in South Dakota, whether that's directly involved in production agriculture or in value-added ag processing, but also manufacturing within the state. We have a relatively low unemployment, which means a lot of job opportunities in our state for those willing to work.
Mm-hmm. You know, you talk about the opportunities and things, opportunities just don't happen. And one of the things that I think is really unique about South Dakota is probably the government and the governor's drive to really take and build a culture that's very conducive for the business climate of South Dakota. And I'd like to have you, if you can, talk maybe a little bit about some of the initiatives that has been or that have been put into place to really cultivate new businesses in South Dakota, enhance probably the opportunities of existing businesses, and you know, some of the things that have been done along that side.
You bet. Well, one of the great places that I could direct anyone interested in learning more about our state and the initiatives that are happening, or just some good information about the business climate in our state, is sdreadytowork.com. Again, that's sdreadytowork.com. And if you're out there looking for an employment opportunity or a job prospect in South Dakota, dakotaroots.com is another really good site, and that's Dakota Roots, ROOTS.com. And so as we've looked at using technology to reach out and talk and tell about our story here in South Dakota, we also find that that investment in our technology has been a major part of why we're in a great position today, because we're about as connected of a state as there is in the country. If you take the calendar back a couple years, you might remember there was a time when we used our Department of Corrections personnel to literally wire the state and all of our schools across the state, and having the technology and access to it. That's something that a prior administration had done, and that really created a culture of taking a leading edge approach to how we can set our state up for success in the long term. And that's some of what I get to enjoy now in my role working with the administration and the Governor's Office of Economic Development, is really continuing to look at what it is that we're doing and why are we doing it, and if there's a better way of doing it, let's get to it. And so the fact is that we have a lean government, which also allows us to react quickly when we have an opportunity to make a difference. We have a working relationship within what I would call a very limited bureaucratic process that has allowed us to have more quick access to opportunities.
You know, it's really unique when I talk with individuals around the country, and they talk about the government involvement, so to speak, and trying to get something done through the government. And I tell them that I can pick up the phone and I can call someone in Pierre, which is the capital, and talk personally to them, and they immediately respond. They go, you got to be kidding me. And that's been the same not only with you know, various agencies, but especially with your department as well. I picked up the phone and I said, hey, I'd love to do this interview with the Ag Secretary, and we're set up, boom, just like that. it's responsive, and I think that's really key to business owners and individuals that are looking to have business in South Dakota.
You know, I think a lot of what you're talking about there, Russ, is also culture. In companies, you hear it referred to as company culture or philosophy. And one of the things that I think that we continue to strive to accomplish is that of customer service. And you're never, in the journey of relevance, you're never really at a destination. It truly is a journey. And when you're in state government or you're in a nonprofit or in business, what are you doing to be relevant to your customers' needs? You know, my customer doesn't come through and pay for goods and leave the store. Rather, they are looking at services that are rendered through our department. And what are the customers and constituents in our state receiving on behalf of that? And are they getting a timely follow-up? You know, not going to say that we're perfect, because we're not, but we continue to strive to get better at what we do. And when we make mistakes, realize that we're paying some tuition. And then ultimately, when I work with our staff and the coworkers here at the Department of Ag, I just keep asking the question, with the tuition that we've paid and this mistake, what have we learned? You know, we've paid some dues, and now let's move forward and take the lessons learned of our past and bring them forward and do a better job of providing services for our constituents here in South Dakota.
I think you're having a lot of success with that, for sure. In our next segment, we're going to be talking with Lucas Lentsch, who's the Secretary of Ag for South Dakota, and we're going to be talking about some of the different activities that you've been in, and with regards to the trade mission to China and some different things along that side. So be sure to tune in for our next segment.
Thank you, Russ.